Chapter 12. The Road Less Travelled. The bus pulled into the Albany Central Terminal, a bustling nexus nestled in the heart of New York's historic capital. This terminal, more than just a stop, was a gateway to various destinations, serving as a pivotal point for travellers seeking passage to the far corners of the state and beyond. Surrounded by the city's architectural tapestry, where modern facades blend with centuries-old buildings, the terminal bore witness to Albany's rich history and its role as a crossroads in the northeast. Around us, the vibrancy of Albany was palpable. The terminal, flanked by the Hudson River's serene expanse to the east and the Empire State Plaza's imposing structure to the south, offered a panoramic view of the city's diverse character. Nearby, the echoes of history resonated from the New York State Capitol, while the cultural hum from the bustling downtown area promised an exploration of Albany's lively arts and culinary scene. As the bus came to a halt, its doors opening with a hiss that momentarily pierced the terminal's constant murmur, we were greeted by the sight of travellers in motion. Some were locals, navigating their daily routines with a familiarity bred from repetition, while others, like us, were visitors, momentarily pausing in Albany on journeys defined by different purposes and destinations. The air was a mix of anticipation and the routine hustle, characteristic of any significant transportation hub. Digital screens flickered with arrival and departure times, guiding passengers to their next connections, while announcements filled the air, a constant reminder of the terminal's role in the intricate ballet of transit. Here in the heart of Albany, the blend of history, culture, and movement provided a backdrop for the next chapter of our journey. Stepping off the bus that felt more crowded than a liquidation sale, but with less enthusiasm and more resignation, Terry and I navigated our way through the throng of passengers with the kind of care usually reserved for bomb disposal experts. It wasn't just about avoiding the accidental brush against a living soul, it was about ensuring we didn't end up with a kind of searing jolt that makes licking a battery seem like a gentle tickle. The discomfort of contact with the living was a stark reminder of our intangible existence, despite being on a very tangible bus. The bus station was a hub of activity, a whirlwind of arrivals and departures that mirrored the bustling confusion of life itself. As we disembarked, the relief of escaping the cramped quarters of public transport was short-lived, replaced by the task of charting our next move. Around us, life buzzed in a cacophony of sounds, from the impatient tapping of a traveller's foot, the distant cry of a child who clearly decided that now was the perfect time for a meltdown. In the quieter margins of the station, away from the direct flow of human traffic, we found what we were looking for, a large map encased in thick perspex mounted on the wall. It was a relic of navigation, a reminder of a time when journeys were plotted with fingers tracing lines on paper, rather than swipes on a screen. The route through Pennsylvania looks direct, I mused, squinting at the map behind its clear barrier. My words hung in the air, an invitation for discussion or dissent. The map, filled with all its roads and highways, quietly hinted at the countless adventures we could embark on. Terry, with a look that seemed to draw on decades of experience, now out of reach to living, remained silent for a moment longer. His gaze was fixed on the network of roads weaving through Pennsylvania, a stare that seemed to pierce through the perspex and into the heart of the matter. The station around us, with its ebb and flow of life, felt momentarily distant as we stood at the precipice of decision-making, guided by a map we could see but not alter. Our route a subject of careful consideration in the face of unseen challenges. Terry's demeanour shifted palpably. Gone was the light-hearted companion I'd journeyed with so far. In his place stood a man as sombre as a priest before confession, his usual warmth smothered by an air of solemnity. TP, Terry started, his voice cutting through the hum of the base station, a rare seriousness in his tone. We need to avoid Pennsylvania. There's a man there, a menace, older than the darkest memories, who chose a path you can't imagine. He paused, struggling to find the right words, his usual easy demeanour replaced by a gravity I hadn't seen before. He's not like any lost soul we talked about. This man willingly embraced darkness, becoming a beacon for it, drawing others to his side. Terry's gaze drifted, maybe to past encounters or warnings he'd once dismissed. People say he's been around since the beginning, ignoring the call that guides us towards, well, something better. He's been a blight on the spirit world, unyielding, for more time than anyone cares to remember. The air around us grew heavier as Terry continued, and his followers, they're not just misguided spirits, they're drawn to him, bound by a shared purpose of chaos and despair. A true congregation of the damned, spreading their malevolence far and wide. This wasn't the Terry I knew. The man who could sell sand in the desert was laying it all out bare, a testament to the seriousness of the threat we faced. Hearing the resolve in my own voice surprised me as I declared, "We'll take the detour through New York and New Jersey." It was a decision laced with uncertainties, yet in that moment it felt like the only viable path. The relief that washed over Terry wasn't just palpable, it was a testament to the weight of our choices. His quick nod, coupled with a momentary meeting of our eyes, silently sealed our mutual understanding and resolve. Facing the unknown challenges of an extended journey suddenly framed our situation in a new light. What lay ahead might be unpredictable, but it paled in comparison to the clear and present danger of crossing paths with the malevolent force lurking in Pennsylvania. This choice, braving the uncertainties of a roundabout path, wasn't just wise. It was a necessary evasion of a darkness so profound it threatened to engulf even the likes of Terry, whose steadfastness had been my anchor. "It's settled then," I added, feeling a newfound determination buoying my initial trepidation. The risks of the unknown are preferable to a confrontation with that darkness. This wasn't just about avoiding a physical location, it was about choosing our battles, opting for a route that, while longer, kept us clear from the shadows that stretched far beyond Pennsylvania's borders. "Then it's settled. New York and New Jersey, here we come," he declared, the light of adventure sparkling in his eyes. "I've got a place in mind that's just begging for a visit from a couple of intrepid souls like us." His voice carrying a mix of relief and anticipation. Our journey was far from over, but in choosing this path, we welcomed the unpredictable nature of the afterlife with cautious optimism, taking steps into the unknown together. Chapter 13. Electric Avenue. As the bus hummed along, leaving the Albany Central Terminal behind, Terry and I found ourselves in a half-empty coach bound for New York. The spaciousness was a welcome change from the cramped conditions we'd grown accustomed to, allowing us to relax without the constant vigilance required to avoid contact with the living. The soft murmur of conversations and the rumble of the road beneath us provided a backdrop to our own quiet companionship. We settled into our seats, the fabric worn but comfortable, each lost in thought as the landscape began to shift outside the windows. I gazed out, watching the scenery change from urban sprawl to the more serene views of the countryside, feeling a mix of relief and anticipation. This bus ride, a brief interlude on our journey, offered a moment of reflection, a pause in the relentless push forward. Terry, ever observant, seemed to sense my introspective mood. He leaned back, his gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the glass, a silent acknowledgement of the road we had chosen. Our decision to take this detour, to embark on a route filled with unknowns, hung between us, unspoken, but there. The bus, with its half-hearted air conditioning and the occasional squeak of seats, became a transient sanctuary. Here, in this moving vessel, the complexities of our spectral existence were momentarily set aside. We were just two travellers, bound by circumstance and choice, navigating the uncertainties of an afterlife neither of us had anticipated. As Albany faded into the distance, the bus continued its steady progress toward New York. The journey ahead promised challenges and revelations, but for now, Terry and I embraced the quiet camaraderie of the road, the shared experience of moving through a world that was no longer ours, but still held moments of beauty and connection. The bus's gentle hum and the landscapes blurring past our windows offered a brief escape from the complexities of our journey. Terry broke the silence, his curiosity about my past pulling me back from the window's view. So, TP, Brixton was your stomping ground, eh? What's the word from those streets? Paint me a picture. His tone, usually ripe with humour or insight, now carried a genuine interest in my former life. I adjusted in my seat facing him. Brixton, a name that encapsulated so much of my youth, suddenly felt like a distant melody. Brixton was lively, to say the least, I started, a smirk playing on my lips as scenes from my past flickered through my mind. Imagine a place where every street corner buzzes with music, where the air is thick with the aroma of street food from every corner of the globe, and the market is a kaleidoscope of colours and voices bargaining and laughing. I leaned back, the memories vivid and warming. My flat there was this quirky, cramped space right above a record shop. You could hear faint bass lines vibrating through the floorboards long after closing time. It was more than just where I slept. It was my part of the neighbourhood's heartbeat. My mates and I, we were inseparable. Brixton brought us together, a motley crew of dreamers, artists and a couple of coders like myself. We'd spend our evenings diving into the local scene, from quiz nights at our local, jazz evenings at the Hootenanny, to impromptu coding sessions that lasted until dawn. It was chaotic, but it was home. I paused. The bus's steady motion, the stark contrast to the whirlwind of memories. And the diversity, it's something else. Walking through Brixton is like taking a world tour without a passport. Every culture, cuisine and creed you could imagine, all mingling. It taught me a lot about acceptance, community, and the beauty of differences. Terry listened, nodding along, his eyes reflecting a mix of amusement and appreciation for the picture I painted. Sounds like a world unto itself, he remarked, a hint of awe in his voice. It was, I affirmed, the image of Brixton, with all its imperfections and splendour, firmly etched in my mind. But, as with all things, life had other plans. My gaze returned to the window, the passing scenery now a mere backdrop to my recollections, a reminder of the journey from the familiar streets of Brixton to the unknown paths that lay ahead. As the bus hummed toward New York, the city's silhouette a distant promise, I found myself navigating the complex web of emotions and decisions that had catapulted me from Brixton's familiar chaos to the uncharted streets of Boston. Terry's interest in my story, his quiet presence across the aisle, offered a semblance of solace as I unpacked the layers of my journey. The Boston opportunity came out of nowhere, I confided, the memory still tinged with a mix of disbelief and destiny. Our little coding project, born out of late-night brainstorming sessions and endless line of code, had somehow caught the eye of startup here. The job offer was flattering, overwhelming, and utterly terrifying all at once. I paused, the weight of that moment pressing down anew. Leaving Brixton, my friends, my family. It felt like I was considering abandoning a part of myself. We were a tight-knit group, bound by shared dreams and the daily grind of making ends meet. The thought of stepping away from that, from them, filled me with an indescribable dread. The landscape outside blurred, mirroring the turmoil that had churned within me at the time. There were endless debates, with myself mostly, but also with friends over pints in dimly lit pubs. Each conversation a seesaw of pros and cons. Boston represented a leap into the unknown, a step toward fulfilling a dream I hadn't dared to fully articulate even to myself. A wry smile crossed my lips as I recalled the oscillation between excitement and fear. It was more than just a job. It was a chance to test my limits, to see how far I could stretch beyond the comfortable confines of my world. But the thought of leaving Brixton, leaving everything that defined me, was paralysing. Terry's nod was both an encouragement and an acknowledgement of the crossroads we all face. Those moments when the path forward is as daunting as it is irresistible. As the decision loomed, the weight of it became a constant companion, a shadow that stretched across every facet of my life in Brixton. The vibrant streets I loved, the market's cacophony, the nights out with friends, all tinged with the bittersweet knowledge that they could soon be memories. I let out a breath I hadn't realised I'd been holding. The indecision was crippling me. On one hand, the adventure of a lifetime. On the other, the life I'd always known. It was a choice between two futures, each with its own promise and pain. As we neared the end of this leg of our journey, the tale of my last night in Brixton awaited. A night of farewells, of unspoken hopes, and the kind of connections that leave indelible marks on our souls. But that story, with its own set of reflections and revelations, needed a moment of its own, a pause before the plunge. My friends, they knew better than to let me slip away quietly, I began, a smile creeping in as the scenes played out in my mind's eye. They orchestrated a farewell tour of Brixton that was more a tribute to our shared history than a simple goodbye. It was as if we were paying homage to every corner that had witnessed our trials and triumphs. We started at the market, the heart of Brixton, where the air vibrated with energy and music and the sizzle of street food. Walking through those stalls, I was struck by how much of my life was intertwined with these alleys. Each vendor's shout, each burst of laughter from the crowds, felt like it was echoing a piece of my story back to me. From there, the night spiraled into a blur of familiar places, each stop laden with memories and alcohol. We hit every old haunt, from the pubs where we debated politics and philosophy over pints, to the clubs where the music had fueled our youthful invincibility. At each place, my friends would raise a glass, offering toasts that were equal parts roasting and reverence. The intensity of the evening was overwhelming, a rollercoaster of emotions as each venue brought its own flood of memories. There was laughter, so much laughter, tinged with the melancholy of knowing these were moments we were leaving behind. But there was also this profound sense of gratitude for the place, for the people who had shaped me. As the night wore on, the reality of my departure began to settle like a fog, thick and inescapable. We ended up at our favourite little spot, a dive bar that had seen more of our confessions and conspiracies than any other. It was there, amidst the noise and the neon, that the finality of it all hit me. Saying goodbye to Brixton wasn't just about leaving a place, it was about leaving a part of myself behind. The farewell tour was more than a sequence of goodbyes. It was a ritual, a way to encapsulate years of friendship and belonging to a single, unforgettable night. Each goodbye felt like I was leaving breadcrumbs, you know? Pieces of my heart scattered across the streets of Brixton, anchoring me to a life I was about to leave behind. As the bus drew closer to our destination, the recollection of that last night in Brixton lingered, a poignant reminder of the complexities of human connections and the bittersweet nature of change. That night was epic, not just for the places we visited, but for the realization that no matter where life took me, Brixton and the people who made it home would always be a part of me. The evening had begun to draw its curtains when my mates, ever so aware of the dwindling sands of my Brixton hourglass, steered us into the warm embrace of a dimly lit pub. This wasn't just any pub. It was a cornerstone of countless memories, its every nook filled with echoes of laughter and nights best left unspoken. Amidst this familiar cacophony, she emerged, as if conjured by the very essence of the night. My usual companion, Courage, was notably absent, only to be temporarily found at the bottom of a pint glass. Yet, when she approached with a smile that seemed to clear the fog of my looming departure, it was liquid bravery that spurred me into conversation. Her aura was magnetic, a beacon in the pub's subdued glow, and suddenly we were conversing with the ease of old friends reunited. Our shared laughter formed a bridge, connecting us in a way that was both engaging and warm. Each joke I hesitantly delivered, admittedly more miss than hit, was met with a warmth in her eyes, a laughter that seemed to envelop me, softening the edges of my apprehension about the journey ahead. There was an undeniable connection, the kind you'd read about in novels or see in films where two souls find each other amidst the chaos of life. She spoke of plans, of next times, words that under any other star would have sparked the future. But there in the shadow of my impending departure, they hung heavy between us. The future paused at the precipice of realization. I found myself ensnared by a paradox. drawn to the promise of what could be, yet shackled by the secret of my imminent leave. The weight of my silence that night, the unsaid goodbyes, left a void filled only by the memory of her number now etched in my phone. A totem of a path not taken. The decision to message her from the airport, a place of in-betweens, was a silent admission of my departure, an attempt to bridge the gap between our shared moment and my new reality. Her response, understanding yet tinged with the sorrow of misconnections, remains a vivid imprint on my heart. Each word, each inadvertent typo, a testament to what might have been. A message that now lies beyond reach, locked within the phone that is a constant reminder of the choices we make and the paths they set us on. In Boston, the vibrant chaos of Brixton seemed worlds away. Where once my days were woven with the close-knit threads of friendship and spontaneous encounters, in Boston they unravelled into isolation. Work exchanges were polite but distant, and my apartment became a silent refuge rather than a home. The city's rhythm, so different from Brixton's heartbeat, echoed the dissonance I felt within. Social media, once a window to shared moments, turned into a silent remember of the life I'd paused. Nightly I'd scroll through the vivid tapestry of my friends' lives continuing without me. In a moment of longing for the past, I reached out to the girl from that last unforgettable night, sending a friend request that hung in digital limbo. As the days stretched into weeks without a response, that pending request mirrored my own suspended state, a symbol of the connections that seemed increasingly out of reach. The twice-weekly Skype calls with Mum, initially a beacon of comfort in my adjustment to a new life abroad, slightly shifted in tone as her health began to falter. At first, unaware of her illness, I basked in the warmth of our conversations, cherishing these digital lifelines that connected me back to Brixton. However, as her condition emerged and rapidly deteriorated, those calls morphed into a harrowing countdown. She attempted to master the gravity of her illness, her voice striving to maintain its usual cheerfulness, but the effort couldn't conceal the truth. The vibrancy that once defined her began to wane, the energy in her words replaced by a tiredness she couldn't hide. Each conversation, once a source of solace, became a stark reminder of the distance between us and the silent, swift progression of her unseen battle. Almost 6 months to the day I left Brixton for a new life in Boston, I found myself back home, but under the shadow of grief. Standing before family and friends at my mother's funeral, I grappled with the task of condensing a lifetime of love and laughter into a short few minutes. As I spoke, the words seemed to echo in the hollow space left by her absence, a pale imitation of the vibrant life she led. I finished the eulogy with a heavy heart, silently hoping she hadn't been listening, dreading that my words hadn't done her justice. During the visit, the thought of reaching out to the girl from my last night in Brixton crossed my mind, but it was quickly drowned out by the weight of my grief. I rationalised that she had likely moved on, or found someone better, someone not caught in the limbo of unresolved grief and displacement. Returning to Boston left me feeling more adrift than ever. The physical distance from Brixton was mirrored by my emotional distance that I felt from my past life. The vibrant streets of my youth, once a stage for endless possibilities, now seemed like just a backdrop to a life I could no longer claim as my own. As the days turned into months, my life in Boston became a monotonous cycle of work, sleep, and the occasional half-hearted attempt to explore a city that felt increasingly alien. The vibrant community of Brixton, with its constant buzz of life and connection, seemed like a distant dream, replaced by the sterile isolation of my apartment and the endless hours spent in front of the computer screen. The job that had once promised so much adventure and opportunity had devolved into a relentless grind, coding for a project that seemed to stretch on indefinitely. The office, once a beacon of innovation and camaraderie, now felt more like a prison, trapping me in a life that was becoming unrecognisable. I watched as my social life dwindled to nothing, a stark contrast to the rich tapestry of relationships and experiences that had defined my existence in Brixton. My friends' lives continued to flourish without me, their adventures and milestones playing out from across the screen of my laptop and phone, a digital reminder of the world I'd left behind. The girl from that last night in Brixton remained an unresolved note. Her silence on social media, a quiet echo of the connection that might have been. Isolation crept in, a slow, insidious tide that eroded my sense of belonging, leaving me feeling untethered from the world around me. The calls with Mum had been a lifeline, but with her passing, even that connection was severed, deepening the chasm between me and the sense of home I so desperately missed. It was in this fog of isolation and despair that I made a decision I believed would end my torment. Exhausted by the relentless cycle of loneliness and disconnectedness and with no respite in sight, I sought what I thought was the only way out. The emotional pain had become unbearable, a constant companion that overshadowed every moment, every failed attempt to find a semblance of the life I once knew. Looking back, it was a decision not made in hope, but in desperation. A misguided belief that in death I would find a release I couldn't achieve in life. But the afterlife, as I've come to realise, was not the escape I had envisioned. Instead of the oblivion I sought, I found myself in this strange limbo, forced to confront the very pain I attempted to flee from. As the narrative of my journey unfolded, from the vibrant streets of Brixton to the sombre reality of my spectral existence, Terry listened with a mix of empathy and solemnity. My final act, born out of a profound despair, now hung between us, a stark reminder of the unforeseen consequences of our darkest moments. Terry, ever the source of grounded wisdom masked in humour, finally broke the reflective silence. Sorry, mate, but don't you think that was a bit, I don't know, stupid? His words, though blunt, were tinged with a friendly chide, a gentle nudge rather than a judgment. For a moment I was taken back. The reality of my choices laid bare in his straightforward question. But then something unexpected happened. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside, a genuine amusement at the absurdity of my final act among the living. Terry joined in, his laughter a harmonious echo to mine. And in that shared moment of levity, I found something I hadn't realised I'd been missing. A sense of camaraderie. A connection that transcended the boundaries of life and death. Agreeing with him, I nodded, the laughter still lingering in the air. Yeah, in hindsight, it was pretty daft, I admitted, the words lighter than I would have expected. Terry's friendly admonishment and the laughter that followed served as a bridge, a way to move forward from the weight of regret and what-ifs. It was a reminder that, even in the afterlife, there was room for friendship, for laughter, and for the kind of understanding that only comes when someone sees you, all of you, and stands by your side regardless. As the bus pulled into its next stop, the early light of dawn casting a soft glow outside, I felt a shift, a subtle easing of the burden I'd carried since that fateful decision. With Terry I had found not just a companion on this unlikely journey, but a friend who reminded me that sometimes the most human thing we can do is laugh at ourselves, learn, and look ahead to whatever comes next.